Hey everyone, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. Today, I have a number of exciting PvP developments, some which actually could get me, who is pretty much a exclusively PvE player, to, you know what, regularly engage in PvP combat in Battle for Azeroth. I really think some of the stuff that they mentioned could be amazing for World PvP based on what I heard Ian talk about when I was at the Blizzard campus last Tuesday. But of course, fear not, current PvP players, there are some upgrades that I think you're going to like as well. So let's kick this off with War Mode. During BlizzCon, we heard their plans to do away with PvP and PvE servers. Well, this new system now has a name. It's called War Mode. War Mode can be activated by going to Stormwind or Orgrimmar and basically just talking to an NPC. And the way that this works is there's essentially a PvP and PvE shard. If you've got War Mode turned on, you will not see the PvE only players, you'll only see the PvP people. If you have War Mode turned off, then you will never see the PvP players. Now, leveling with the threat of PvP combat can be sort of exhilarating, but it is a bit less efficient, and Blizzard plan to give you a boost to experience gain and things like that while War Mode is active, with their overall design goal being that doing content is pretty much as efficient with War Mode turned on as it is with War Mode turned off. But next, let's really talk about the juicy bit here, and this is what Ian seemed to be visibly excited about when he was talking, and I think this could be really big for the game if they did it right. So, Ian talked about how previously it was very hard to make world PvP content with the split between PvE and PvP servers. With War Mode being an official mode of play that people can opt into, it basically allows the team to put resources into making War Mode exclusive content. This basically means an entire new level of meaningful world PvP can be introduced to the game as an official, supported, sort of good mode of play. Ian just had an example. It was basically a supply drop, spawning in a zone. You might think that sounds boring, but that would be kind of misunderstanding how PvP games tend to work. So take Overwatch, really simple objectives. It has not innovated really much in terms of its maps or its game modes, but it has a lot of deep gameplay because of its classes. So in World of Warcraft, if a supply zone or drop appears in a zone, then players will flock to it. They'll battle it out over the resource. So by adding a simple little supply crate, Blizzard essentially create a PvP flashpoint. What's even better is that adding these to interesting locations in terms of, say, their geometry, that can lead to combat that feels pretty much different every time. Now, PUBG's not a good comparison here, but basically in PUBG, when a supply drop happens, it's pretty damn intense and thrilling. What's better is that, with adding small systems like this, Blizzard could get closer to a world PvP sandbox that can actively hold your attention for a very long time. And the fantastic thing about this type of content is it's kind of not content heavy, it's systems heavy. All you need to do is create a light touch of intelligent systems that allow for player freedom. Now, I'm not saying that World PvP is ever going to be a big, glorious sandbox like EVE Online, but what I am saying is that with the right dose of systems on top of War Mode, you could end up with a highly replayable and pretty, I'd say, joyful World PvP experience. One that's set in the world of Warcraft, and I think sometimes we do so much instanced content that we really do miss out on content that is so focused on the actual world itself. But to be very clear, Ian just talked about the idea of, say, a little supply drop and how that would create a cool type of gameplay. That's not a launch feature. War Mode is a great foundation, but it is on Blizzard to make good use of that opportunity. I'm going to cover a few quick little ideas later on in this video, but for now, let's continue on with the news, and we're going to hop right over to Prestige. So the Legion Prestige system was added, and it had some pros and cons. Ian talked about how the original system wasn't really a great fit for the game, and how the intended design goal of unlocking traits, first, it only existed for a few weeks, and, people didn't like it. Well, this system is different in Battle for Azeroth. At first, it's no longer called the Prestige system. Why? Well, the idea of prestiging, that's out the window. It has been for a long time, even in Legion. Instead, we're going to get a system that is similar to Overwatch experience, that's account-wide. You'll keep on leveling up, and every time you level up, you'll get some sort of award. So, like Overwatch, it's account-wide across all of your characters, so whenever you gain honor, it's filling up your account-wide honor bar. Further to this, Ian confirmed that the existing Legion Prestige awards will be available in the new system, so basically it will level up infinitely, and whenever you level up, you will get rewards. And as for the existing honor talent discounts, they are unlocked based on your character level, which pretty much means by the time you're max level, you can just choose from all of them. And yeah, this seems like a far better system that just has a better fit to World of Warcraft to me. But that's not all in terms of PvP progression, because it's time to talk about gear. One aspect of Legion PvP that didn't really go down that well is the randomness involved with getting gear. Now, this was done by Blizzard, or at least one of their reasons behind it was that PvP gear didn't exist, right? So there wasn't gear that would have a higher item level in PvP, like Warlord's PvP gear, or, there wasn't gear that had, say, resilience, like previous bits of PvP gear. And now, overall, the system didn't really work that well, and Blizzard have decided to reintroduce a more deterministic system. So to do this, they're reintroducing Conquest, but in a different way to what you might think. Previously, Conquest was a currency that you would earn by doing rated PvP content. It had a weekly cap, and you would then spend those Conquest points on gear from a vendor. Well, the new Conquest system is a bar. You fill the bar up, and when you do, you get a piece of gear. Now, this gear comes in 3 different tiers, with successive tiers, I assume, being more powerful. Probably just an item level, but who knows? They could be different in terms of design. So the way that this works is pretty much like each week you fill up the Conquest bar, you will get a piece of gear from the set. So you'll start off getting tier 1 gear from the set, and once you've got the tier 1 stuff, then the system will start to give you the tier 2 stuff. Now, I'm not exactly sure how random this is or any of that. They didn't really talk about that, but basically this exists as a baseline progression. Now, gladiator type players, you will be able to get ahead of the curve, but in a more random way, which I believe is a bit more similar to some of the Legion systems. Overall, I'd say this: I really like there being a more deterministic system, and the progression of working your way, from start to finish through this gear. I think that actually could be pretty motivating, both in terms of player power, but also in terms of the visuals of your character. We already, as an example, have seen 3 tiers of Warfront armor, and I'm wondering if maybe that's being used, or they have something similar there. One criticism, though, that I do have, maybe, is that, players, I think they want to spend currency at a vendor to get the gear that they want that fits their character and their own goals, and maybe slots in with gear they already have from other sources. So I hope the Blizzard are going to be able to work a vendor into this new Conquest system. Right now, it seems like they are balancing it so that more casual PvP players will sort of just naturally gear up through this semi-deterministic Conquest system plus random drops, but the gladiator tier players, they will be able to keep up with high-end raiders through the additional gearing methods. Overall, I'm quite glad to hear Ian acknowledge players' desire for a more deterministic gearing system to PvP, and I very much hope they're able to deliver well on that. There's no word on their other plans for PvP content, but we do know previously from BlizzCon, Zuldazar and Borealis will have arenas themed around them. Personally, I'd love to see more battleground maps, especially for existing game modes. That combined with a playlist-based queue would be great. So let's just say if there were 5 capture the flag maps and you put those into a playlist, that would get me PvPing a hell of a lot more. Next though, war mode. Let's move back to that. We're at the end of the video, so it's time for the non-news stuff. I just want to discuss how some new types of gameplay that are made possible by a system like this. So the core benefit is that the game world can be filled with dynamic objectives such that world PvP would feel unpredictable and exciting, rather than dull and static. Ian's example of a bunch of players fighting over a supply cache, it's an extremely simple example, but what's cool is that something very simple can create a PvP flashpoint and lead to a fresh feeling of gameplay. So if you're to take the idea of a caravan, maybe it spawns in as one of these events, it travels along the existing roads through the game, the defending players escort it, the attacking players have to capture it. Another thing you could do is maybe a King of the Hill type mode that involves a capture point. Now, this could perhaps be located in places with, sort of interesting geography, right? Such that they almost end up feeling like miniature PvP maps. You could do, maybe a big vein of Azerite pops up and maybe players get interesting buffs from that. You could even get really weird with it, have a Kotmogu style powerball, right? It makes you deal and take more damage. The difference is it makes you hostile to everyone, and the controlling player maybe gets a small reward every 10 seconds they hold it. You could have a call to arms mechanic that would encourage people to fight in a certain zone. Something like this could be used region-wide for PvP to really bring the faction war to life. It need only be something small, right? Like a buff to PvP reward gains in that zone, or an increased frequency of PvP-related events, and that would really drive player behavior and create some really cool moments. If Blizzard were to go all out, they could even design an area of a zone or something like that to have a whole bunch of PvP objectives that are linked to each other, such that the map turns into into a big tug of war. Winning an event could maybe let you push forward to the next event. Now, here's the cool bit, you could then use the island exploration AI to have intelligent NPCs, which would pretty much mean that this mode would work with war mode turned on and with war mode turned off. And you know what? I think that would be a really, really fun bit of content that I could see eating up quite a few hours. But there you go. That is a PvP update for Battle of Azeroth. Overall, I'm not majorly into PvP, but I do like the sound of this new gearing system. I think that's maybe something that as a casual PvP player, what it would mean is every week I would fill that conquest bar to get my, deterministic bit of gear, and that would just be another thing I could do every week in the game, and that seems pretty good. So that's definitely great. And war mode, I've seen a lot of skepticism about that system down in the comments. I definitely do just have a difference of opinion. I really think it could be tremendously good for the game if they do it right. For me, what's interesting about World PvP is, there being a war going on in the World of Warcraft, ganking people in barons or something. I know that's a bit of a straw man, sort of, but I guess my view of World PvP is that I think it is interesting if you are like fighting in the world and you're sort of fighting for things that matter, rather than, I guess, some of the other types of World PvP. At the end of the day, I'm just glad that they're experimenting with it, and if this pays off, I think it could be great. But there you go, that's it for me. Thank you very much for watching this video. A tremendous thank you to everyone over on Patreon, and with all that, I will see you guys next time.
Thank you.